Okay, we have now to talk about how to feed these baby plants. So this is module 4, and it's how do we feed our young plants. These came out of a nursery here locally, Wild Spirits Farm. They were grown with love and care and were fed very well up to this point. They are in a soil that is full of nutrition still, but these baby plants, their root systems are right on the edge of that root ball, and they're ready to expand out into the surrounding soil. The microbes and the roots associated with those roots on that baby plant are going to be looking for nutrition to give to that plant. They're going to find it in the sand silt clay, the mineral material that this soil is made out of. The microbes will find nutrition there and make it available to the plants. Baby plants don't need to be overfed. You don't want to hit them with a high analysis fertilizer, a lot of NPK right in the beginning of their life cycle, because they're learning how to develop relationships with the soil microbes. What I like to do is provide biological food sources, and so compost or compost extracts, even a kelp meal extract right at the beginning of the transplanting experience and their new homes and their new soil environment. I don't want to overfeed them, but I want to make sure they've got a little something to keep them nourished as they're going through this stressful stage of being taken out of a closed environment. These baby plants, all they knew was that they've reached the edge of their nutritional supply. They've reached the edge of that plastic pot. They've already assessed what was available to it, and they're starting to make decisions about how much they can invest into their fruit or their leaf structure. So providing a little nutrition right as they're going into this new soil environment will help them, one, get over the stress, and two, expand out a little bit further into the surrounding soil. So we've mixed a little bit of compost, of the abundant biology compost, into the soil as we were prepping the soil. You can also put a little bit into the transplanting hole if you like. I didn't do that. What I'm going to do is top dress. Many of our participants will have picked up their plants already and already started the transplanting process, but will not have had their compost yet. And so they are still in good hands with this compost. You can take this beautiful compost and use it as a top dressing. You know, maybe a handful and a half around each of these baby plants. Spread it out as far as you'd like to see their root system go. Many of the nutrients in this compost are complexed inside of microbes, bacteria, fungi, but also there is a little bit of soluble nutrients in there. Nitrogen, ammonium, potassium. So what will happen when it rains or when you water, those soluble nutrients will start to percolate down through the soil profile and become available pretty immediately to your plants. So compost is a great way to feed your recently transplanted little ones. And again, I'm just putting, handful and a half, depends on how big your hands are. But it doesn't have to be a whole lot. And know that you can come back and do this again in 2 weeks. You don't need to apply all of your compost all at once. Reserve it. Use it when you need it. You don't want to overfeed your plants. If you overfeed your plants, then they will not build relationship with microbes. It's a complicated thing to explain, but it's one of my favorite topics, and so I'm happy to explain it to anyone that inquires, but I won't bore you with it right now. Just know that if you overfeed your young plants, they won't build relationships with microbes, and then you'll be stuck feeding your plants all through the season versus the way they've evolved to be fed, which is by the microbes. Everybody's getting a little compost. And then I've got another little trick up my sleeve that I'll tell you about in a minute. peppers, tomatoes, and eggplants, maybe you give them 2 scoops. They're a little heavier feeders. And they're going to branch out further, so you can supply that compost a little bit further out from their original planting hole. When you reserve some of your compost, you've got a 40-pound bag, and so that's in essence a full, very full, 5-gallon bucket is about 40 pounds. You'll want to keep it covered or keep it inside. Make sure it doesn't get wet, that no water sits in the compost and gets stagnant. That turns it anaerobic, and it's no longer the same quality amendment. This compost is made by taking organic material and mixing it together with the right moisture level, about 50% moisture, and allowing it to heat up. There's enough nitrogen in the raw materials, those organic matter materials, to heat that compost up above 131 degrees. It's allowed to stay above that temperature for 3 days, and then it's turned. According to the standard organic composting for thermophilic compost standards, you want to have your pile heat up and be turned 5 times. So this compost was able to reach its temperature above 131, which will kill pathogens and will kill weed seeds. And then it's turned, allowed to heat up again. That cycle went on 5 times. It's aerated compost because it's being turned, and it's thermophilic compost because it heated up. Okay, so we've applied our compost. My next little application, it's called an extract. You can make these in a million different ways, but because we're not going to spray it through a pump sprayer, I'm not doing it the way I normally would do it. What I've done here is I've taken, this is rainwater, about 4 gallons of rainwater, and I mixed in about 8 ounces of kelp meal, a high quality dried kelp meal. It's Thorvin kelp is what I used, but any high quality kelp meal will be fine. About 8 ounces to 4 gallons. And then I mixed in about 2 cups of the Abundant Biology compost, and I stirred it, let the kelp meal become hydrated. Kelp is a very broad spectrum nutritional plant, nutritionally very broad spectrum in the nutrients that it contains, but it also contains a lot of plant hormones. So you've got gibberellin, auxin, cytokinins, all of these plant hormones that are now going to help stimulate these baby plants to grow. Gibberellin, cytokinins, auxins are all plant growth promoting hormones. Cytokinins are really great for assisting in root growth. So not only do you have the hormones, you have every single element that kelp contained as well in this solution. And we're pouring it on. I'm just scooping it out with a little pot here, whatever you got, it's fine. I didn't let this sit long. Let it sit for an hour or 2 is fine, but stir it every 20 minutes to keep it aerated. You don't want to let anaerobic organisms start to breed in your extract. You want to keep it aerated, and just stirring it is fine. If you're doing a short cycle, just an hour or 2, you just want that kelp to get hydrated. And we're doing a top dressing, or we're applying it to the top of the soil, and so you're going to see little bits of kelp meal around the top of your soil, and that's fine. That'll break down under the mulch and become food for microbes, which will become food for your plants. And I'm putting a couple, 2 cups per plant, just around the planting area, not directly on the plant, just around its little root zone. Again, this is going to help buffer from having any dry roots. It's going to get a little nutrition close to the root system. It's kind of beckon those roots to expand. And these are just really simple ways that you can feed your young plants without really having to go to the store and buy any bottled fertility inputs. You've got the compost on hand. Kelp meal can be bought relatively inexpensively. If you're interested in being a part of a bulk order of a 50-pound bag of kelp meal, let me know. We'll have kelp meal available for everyone to use during the growing season. Do keep in mind though, none of this is actually necessary. If you have pretty decent soil, you don't have to do the extract. If you don't have the compost, you can add it later when you get it. Just get your plants in the soil. Make sure that they're hydrated. Don't worry about the inoculant. Don't worry about the fertility. We'll get you some compost and they'll be great. No worries. All right, that's feeding your baby plants.